When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be doing part 3 of our Blackfyre Rebellion series. Today's video will be mainly focused on Nerys and Aemon the Dragon Knight. I think it is important to talk about them, and because there's some of the actions that occurred during the Blackfyre Rebellions that do involve them. Even though the Blackfyre Rebellion, it doesn't kick off until after their deaths, it is important to understand these characters. What they could have been involved with is still up for debate. A lot of things about their lives are speculation and rumor. And so in this video, I'm going to try to paint an idea of what their relationship was like, the possibilities that maybe the rumors of Daeron's actual parentage may be true or false, and also painting the relationship between Aegon, Nerys, and Aemon as well. In the last video I did, I talked about Aegon, and I talked about Aegon's side of things in terms of the relationship between Nerys and Aemon. This is going to be the flip side. I want to tell their side of the things and some of the parts of their lives that led up to the Blackfyre Rebellion. I want to preference this isn't a character analysis. Like, I'm not going to look at every single part of their life unless I believe it's relevant to the actual Blackfyre Rebellion or it had something to do with it. So, like, for Aegon the Fourth, it was basically a character analysis, and that's because he is the main person that basically allows the Blackfyre Rebellion to happen, so every action that he does in his life is important to understand, whereas Aemon and Nerys is not the same way, in my opinion. But before we get into the video, if you do want to become a Patreon or a member, consider being one. You do get videos early, and also you do get an exclusive video each week, and thank you to the people that already support me on those. But let's get into the video. So, Aemon the Dragon Knight was born in 136 AC. This is about a year after Aegon IV, and also their sister Nerys was born in 139 AC. Now, the first thing that I want to bring up here, because it is interesting with the development of these characters, I talked about with the Aegon video, that their mother, Lara Rogar, actually leaves around 139 AC, almost directly after Nerys is born. So it's quite interesting to think about, like, Nerys herself grew up basically without a mother. Aemon probably had his mother for maybe 3 years, if that. So out of the three of them, Aemon and Nerys were the two that knew their mother even less than, say, Aegon IV would have. And so it's kind of weird because if you think about Aegon IV, it might have been harder on him because he actually knew his mother. He would have actually come to know her. Like, if you go back to when you were 3 years old, how much do you remember, right? Like, that's what I'm kind of saying. So it's like Aemon and Nerys, they would have just basically grown up not having a mother at all. Like, not even remembering their mother really, just having an absent mother in their life, right? Whereas Aegon, it would have felt more like an abandonment. Like, he would have been somebody that would have known his mother at least a little bit. And then, she leaves, and then now you don't have a mother. It is very interesting to think about the way that they kind of grow up. And I already talked about this, like, in last week's as well. Like, Viserys II is very young when he has kids. There only would have been like a 14-year gap, I believe, between Aemon and his father, Viserys II. And if you think about Nerys, it would have been only a couple more years. It would have been like 17-year gap, which is a little bit more acceptable, but it's still quite weird. But I think the thing to understand with both Nerys and Aemon as they're growing up, right? We don't really need to get into specifics of some of the things that happen early on in their lives, but the two things to really understand with the two characters is they were the complete opposite of Aegon, right? Aegon was somebody that didn't really care too much about the faith. He was somebody that cared about pleasures and lust and all of these things, whereas Aemon and Nerys are both described as being very pious. I would specifically say Nerys was, as she was known to commonly go to the Seven-Pointed Star, the book, and she would find solace in those things. She was someone that was very devoted to the faith, and she actually would have become a septa if her father had allowed it. So she definitely gives off the opposite vibes of Aegon. But something else to kind of understand with the two characters of Aemon and Nerys, it was said even from an early age, the two were very close. Now, what does that mean, right? Are we talking like Jaime and Cersei close? Or are we talking about something like, for instance, Arya and Jon, where they're close, but it feels more like a sister-brother type relationship? What is so what is that idea? And there's going to be a lot of references I'm going to make to the normal story with their two relationship, because it really has some similar beats to Marjorie and Loras and Jaime and Cersei. And that is kind of what you see right away. And when you really even get further into it, if you think about Jaime and Cersei's relationship, the main thing you think about with Jaime is he wanted to be closer to Cersei at court, right? And all those things. But then some things don't end up working out. Cersei ends up going back to Castaway Rock. It doesn't go perfectly the way Jaime was hoping it was going to go, as Cersei had kind of made the plan for him. But eventually, we get to this point where Robert becomes king and his sister marries Robert. And you have the same situation that plays out with Aemon and Aerys happening there, where you have this kind of overweight, king who kind of, abuses his sister and Jaime's sister Cersei, and in this case, Aemon's sister Nerys. And so you have all that going down, and there's some stuff going on there, right? In the main story, we know Jaime and Cersei were sleeping together, but in this situation with Aemon and Aerys, were they also sleeping together? And it's interesting because George writes about the conflict of the heart quite a lot. And I would almost reference like Loras and Marjorie's relationship together more than I would like Cersei and Jaime's, because Marjorie and Loras, we don't know exactly how close they are. We don't know like the Tyrell, we don't have a Tyrell POV, right? Could it be that those two are also sleeping together? We don't know. It does. I don't think so. But again, it's more up in the air, like how Aemon and Nerys is. Like you could really go anywhere with it. But the important thing to understand as the two were growing up and they were very close is that Nerys was to be married to Aegon. And there's some things that happen here that are very fascinating, right? There is a rumor made by singers specifically that claim that both Aemon and Nerys wept during the ceremony, but it seems that the truth is probably different, that it was really just Nerys who wept during the bedding as Aemon and Aegon got into a fight and a quarrel. That seems more likely as to what occurred. And so why would that be? Why would Aegon and Aemon be quarreling? Is it because Aemon is jealous of Aegon? Something similar we would see to say like, Criston Cole and like Laenor, like that type of situation in House of the Dragon. What made them quarrel so far? Like, what made them quarrel already, right? Was Aemon trying to, protect his sister because his sister, even from birth, was kind of more weaker and was prone to maybe not being able to do childbirth? Maybe Aemon was already picking up on that, or that was something that Nerys was scared about. There's a lot there that we just don't know. And, what we do know is directly after this wedding, Aemon joins the Kingsguard. And I think this was made specifically so Aemon could protect his sister. Whether Viserys also knew that, who knows? I'd like to think he probably did, and he was part of that reasoning as to why Aemon should go into the Kingsguard. But it also makes sense for Aemon specifically, right? He is somebody that wanted to protect, his sister. He is somebody that, again, if you do believe the idea that the two were, in love, he wouldn't want to go with any other woman. So it made sense as to why he would go into the Kingsguard. But this is where I think a lot of the issues come up, right? With Nerys and Aemon and the way that they go on. And other parts, just going back to Aemon, because I talked a little bit about Nerys, but, or in that early part of life, like Aemon was somebody that would have been viewed as a threat by Aegon, right? He would have been viewed as a threat. Because Aemon was somebody that was so good at sword fighting. He had been gifted the sword Dark Sister. And even later, as Aemon goes on, I talked about Aegon and what his role during the actual conquest of Dorne was. That's the case here as well with Aemon. Aemon was a Kingsguard. He is somebody that also would have been part of the conquest of Dorne. He is somebody that actually prevents an assassination attempt on Daeron by throwing himself in the path of a poisoned arrow meant for the king. Aemon would survive this poisoning and eventually would come back to Dorne to protect his king. But unfortunately, Daeron's conquest, as we know, doesn't end particularly well. Aemon was with Daeron when he met the Dornishmen under a peace banner in 161 AC. Together with the 4 other knights of the Kingsguard, 3 of those Kingsguard knights died, but defending Daeron, 1 shamefully yielded, and Aemon was captured after slaying 2 of the betrayals. But eventually, Aemon was put naked in a crow cage, placed above a pit filled with vipers. It really shows that, Aegon also was, I think, a big fan of Daeron and was somebody that looked up to him, but Aemon also probably was as well. But the two go on very different paths. Whereas Aegon seems to have this anti-Dornish feeling to him, Aemon never takes that route, actually. He is somebody that kind of honors the marriages that goes forward and doesn't seem to have this anti-Dornish hatred, even though out of everybody, he is the one that suffers the most humiliation, watching his king die, all these things. And yet Aegon is the one that really hates the Dornish more than Aemon seems to ever do. But eventually, Aemon is saved from Dorne as Baelor came to his rescue, and Aemon then has to rescue Baelor because he gets bit by snakes over and over again. Probably was close to dying, but eventually they do end up making it back to King's Landing. Now, there's not a lot more to know of from Baelor in his time during the reign of Viserys II. He really becomes vital to the story as we get into the reign of his brother. But let's think about the things that were going on during this time. Outside of that, you had Nerys giving birth to her first son, Daeron, and the birth was pretty difficult. And this is why I think Aemon would have probably been upset at that feast, is because he knew his sister's condition, right? At this point, the Grand Maester Alfred had warned Aegon that if there was another pregnancy, it could kill her. And Aegon didn't care. We talked about that in the last video, and that could have been another thing that would have put Aemon against his brother, because Aegon just doesn't really care about Nerys whatsoever. And Aemon, well, he seemed to care about her a lot. And this is really when some of the things start to spark up. But Aegon would kind of keep to himself. Maybe any reservations that he had about the actual parentage of Daeron, he wouldn't really put any of his plans in motion until after his father's death, which makes a lot of sense. Viserys would never have allowed these claims to just be thrown out there about Daeron's parentage if he was still alive. Another reason as to why maybe some people believe Aegon had his father, Viserys II, killed. But let's kind of evaluate this. Is it possible that Aemon actually was the father of Daeron? I think it's quite possible, given, we look at Targaryens, they are very commonly sleeping together in terms of brother and sister. But there is a little bit of a but there, right? Nerys being as pious as she was, does it make sense for her to sleep with her brother outside of wedlock? And also, if you think about what the faith thinks about incest, I know that the Targaryens have their whole exceptionalist thing. I do find it a little harder to believe that maybe the two would have slept together, especially with the fact that Aemon would have known that his sister would not be good at childbirth given her condition. I don't know if I really accept it, but here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. This is why I don't think it really matters, is that there's no way to actually tell who Daeron's father was, right? Because Aegon would have also been sleeping with Nerys at this time. There's no way to tell, right? Because when Daeron comes out, he looks like a traditional Targaryen. And again, Aemon and also Aegon look like traditional Targaryens. There's nothing crazy about them. But here's something that I think is quite interesting, right? The way we look at Aemon and the way he is kind of described, his appearance, in my opinion, here's what I find interesting, is when we think about Daeron's kind of description. Let me actually read off Daeron's description. Daeron the Second, or Daeron the Good, was described as round-shouldered with thin legs and a small pot belly. He is someone that's not described anything like Aemon Targaryen at his infancy. Because Aemon is described as an infant, Aemon was large, lusty, and strong, and just as beautiful as his brother Aegon was. And so it's made very clear that both Aegon and Aemon are made pretty big dudes. They're pretty well-built guys. And so I don't really think that you can accurately go, okay, well, Aemon looks like this, Aegon looks like that, so which one does Daeron look the most like? Because he kind of takes after his mother a little bit. He's a little bit more smaller in frame and scale and those things. So again, I don't really think that there is actually a way to go, yeah, this is who actually fathered Daeron. I don't think there is an argument there. And I don't even think it's actually that important, because if you're somebody that was going for Daemon Blackfyre, your argument wasn't necessarily that Daeron was a bastard, right? That maybe equals the playing field a little bit. But the actual argument is more that, okay, well, Daemon Blackfyre is the person that Aegon wanted to rule after him. It's the same idea as Viserys wanting Rhaenyra to be king after him, because it's who he wanted. It's not necessarily what the law dictated. The law dictated that the male heir comes first. That's what the Great Council said. And so when you look at it from that point of view, it's yes, the Daeron, parentage does matter, but it doesn't matter, I think, in my opinion, as much as other people might have viewed it as, because it is something that was just used to try and confirmation bias Daemon Blackfyre is the person that Aegon wanted to rule. right? All Daeron's parentage of him being like Aemon and Nerys, all it does is just makes it okay. He's brought down to kind of a Daemon Blackfyre's level in terms of being a bastard, right? And so then it's like, okay, well, which bastard do you choose? And it kind of maybe hurts Daeron a little bit. But in my opinion, I think the more important issue of the entire conflict is who Aegon wanted to be king. That to me is more important than Daeron's actual parentage, because there's no way to actually tell who it actually was. But either way, that gets into the reign of Aegon the Fourth. So getting into Aegon the Fourth's reign, immediately he starts to kind of spread this rumor of Daeron's parentage. And even it seems like, also him with Morgul Haspic, it seems like the two could have worked together. They propose to basically say that Daeron's father and mother were Nerys and Aemon, not Aegon. And Prince Aemon, of course, is going to defend his sister's honor in a trial by combat, and he ends up slaying Morgul. Now, this should have put the claims to rest. If you're going based off of the faith, the faith allowed Aemon to win. But this was not a good thing for Aegon. He was very annoyed by this. He saw this as maybe a way to shift it to Daemon is now the heir, but that was not the case. And that's kind of what happens really in all of Aemon and Aegon's lives, is that Aemon is able to basically thwart Aegon at every single turn. And as Daeron got older, Daeron became part of the Nerys and Aemon camp, right? And of course, that makes sense. Aegon's trying to disinherit him. He's trying to, basically dishonor his mother, all of these different things. Of course, Daeron is going to take that side of it. And also, Daeron himself was marrying into the Dornish. And so when you have Aegon who's trying to plan these unprovoked wars on Dorne because of past grievances and all these things, of course, Aemon and Aerys are going to support the Dornish. They're going to support Daeron's side of things, but Aegon maybe plays another card, right? Makes Daeron have to sit out, playing the, I'll make Daemon the heir type situation. So you kind of have a situation where you have two different sides of it, right? You have the Aemon, Nerys side of things and the Aegon side of things. And as things go on, it becomes more and more clear that the two sides are against each other. Because when Nerys later on seems like she's going to die giving birth to the twins, it seemed as though Aegon was trying to supplant Nerys after her death, trying to put somebody else on it, namely Bracken, with the king's bastard Aegor Rivers, also known as Bittersteel. But fortunately, Nerys did recover, and the scandal caused the Brackens to basically be removed from court. We also know that in 172 AC, Nerys gave birth to a set of twins, which one was stillborn, but the other one was Princess Daenerys, someone that Daemon Blackfyre would kind of lust afterwards. But this wouldn't stop it, right? Think about how many childbirths we are trying to see that are failing with Nerys, and it's only going to take one more before she ends up dying. But before we get to that point, there's still some other things that need to kind of be talked about here. Because something that I find very interesting that also kind of basically matches up a story we hear during Robert's Rebellion is around this time, there was a tournament that Aemon had been forbidden from participating in because Aegon wanted to crown his mistress of the time as the Queen of Love and Beauty. But Aemon disobeyed Aegon. Disguised as a mystery knight, Prince Aemon won a tourney, and after winning as the Knight of Tears, Aemon crowned Nerys as Queen of Love and Beauty instead. Again, we hear another situation of a mystery knight during Robert's Rebellion with a possibility that it was Lyanna Stark. Just a nice little tying in. And this is what I mean by George kind of repeats his history a lot of times, because some of the things that we've talked about in today's video mirror other things much closer to the main story, and even may have helped how he writ some of these things in the past and how they worked. It would happen that Aemon would die because of his brother's stupid mistakes, constantly being an idiot, in my opinion. Aegon once was attacked in an assassination attempt by two brothers of House Tywin who sought revenge for the torture and execution of their brother, Sir Terence Tywin. As Aemon being the most noble and honorable Kingsguard, and being the captain of the Kingsguard for many years, he gave his life defending his brother. Probably the worst king. Yeah, I wouldn't say the worst. I would personally say Aerys is worse. Probably the second worst king he gives his life for. This seemed to be the last thing that broke Nerys, as she dies very soon after this, as she was again forced into another childbirth nearly a year after. and she dies as well. And this would be where Aegon would finally gain more confidence, start openly declaring Daeron's parentage as being an Aemon and Aerys, is because they weren't there to defend themselves, right? No longer could Aemon put down those rumors, because as Aemon the Dragon Knight is still remembered very fondly by Westeros, but what does his legacy leave behind? And part of it is going to be the lingering question of Daeron's birth that would haunt this time period, as many would declare for Daemon Blackfyre when he rises up. Many would use this as justification for him to take the throne, but we still have no answers. George has not provided us with more information on this topic to really get specifics. We're just left to imagine what occurred. In my opinion, I think it probably wasn't Aemon and Aerys that were the father of Daeron. That is just my opinion. Again, I think you can go either way with this. I just don't think there's enough evidence to back either side to have a definitive answer. Like, I would say I'm like, if I'm in the middle of picking which side, I'd say I lean 5% to the side that says that Aegon was the true father of Daeron II. But again, I think it also goes with George's writing that Aemon was the father. So who knows? But in his legacy, eventually, there would be another Aemon Targaryen, a son of Maekar Targaryen, who would be one of the best Targaryens of all time, Maester Aemon. But that is really the story of Daenerys and Aemon. I didn't get into too specific on some of the details of their life because some of their details just don't really matter in terms of a Blackfyre Rebellion series. The real point of this video was getting around that idea of Aemon and Daenerys and their relationship and what they possibly did or didn't do in terms of Daeron's parentage and kind of the relationship with Aegon and some of the things that would have provoked the wars to come. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. I hope you guys are excited for the rest of this series, as we'll probably be talking about Daeron in the next one. I think it makes the most logical sense that we do Daeron, and then we'll kind of talk about some of the great bastards and all of that. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.